I've had this for a bit now, and a few people asked me about it, so here is my take. This is basically a big battery with an inverter and a bunch of input and output options, built for people who actually plan to run real stuff, not just topping off a phone. I keep coming back to it for two types of use. One is recreational vehicle and camping power, where I want to run everyday appliances without firing up a gas generator. The other is basic home backup for short outages, where I want the refrigerator, lights, internet, and a few small things to keep going. If your plan is to buy something and leave it in a closet for a month and expect it to be full when you need it, I have some notes on that later, because this one is not the most hands-off unit I have used. What makes it interesting, at least to me, is that it feels like it was designed around solar charging and higher power loads. A lot of portable power stations can accept solar, but they feel happiest on a couple of panels and light use. This one is comfortable taking a lot of solar input, and it is comfortable running appliances that would make smaller units complain. Physically, it is a chunky, boxy unit. Mine feels tough in the way tool cases feel tough. It has two large side handles that make sense because you are not carrying this with one hand for long. It is heavy enough that I treat it as transportable, not something I casually move around all day. The corners are rubberized, and that helps when I set it down on concrete or in the back of the vehicle. The casing does not feel creaky, and the port covers snap back the way they should. After using it for a while, nothing has started to feel loose. The front layout is simple once you live with it. Inputs are grouped together, outputs are grouped together, and I do not have to hunt around in the dark for the basics. On my unit, I have multiple alternating current outlets, plus a 30-amp recreational vehicle outlet, and then a mix of universal serial bus and direct current ports. There is a wireless charging pad on the top that I honestly thought I would ignore, and then I ended up using it while cooking or working at a table. It is one of those small conveniences that keeps the clutter down. The screen is readable indoors, but outdoors it is not my favorite. In bright sun, I find myself shading it with my hand to check input and output. Another thing I noticed is the screen behavior. It stays on. That is nice when it is sitting on a table and I want to glance over, but it does tie into the bigger point that the unit has a noticeable idle drain. I will explain what I saw in real use. Charging from the wall is done with an external charging brick. That brick is large, it gets hot, and it has its own fan. I have mixed feelings about it. Carrying a separate brick is annoying, and when I am charging fast, I hear the fan on the brick and also the fans in the power station. On the other hand, pushing that heat outside the main unit makes sense to me. Heat is one of the enemies of long-term battery health, so I would rather the heat live in the brick than inside the battery case. In my testing, one wall charger got me from empty to full in a few hours. When I borrowed a second charger to see how it behaved, it took significantly less time. I would only do that if I really needed a fast turnaround because the total noise level goes up, and in a quiet room it is obvious. Car charging works, but I treat it as a slow top-off. While driving, it is fine. If I am parked and trying to refill the battery from a vehicle outlet, it is not the method I reach for. Solar is the reason I keep using it. It has multiple solar inputs, and in practice that means I can run more than one array without a bunch of adapters. Two of the inputs accept higher voltage, which matters because it lets me wire panels in series. When I do that, the current stays lower, and that helps on longer cable runs. I have used it with series wired panels on the higher voltage inputs and a smaller lower voltage panel on the other input. Under good midday sun, I have watched it pull a lot of power, not just a trickle. The kind of input where you can run loads and still see the battery percentage hold steady or even climb when the sun is cooperating. That is the real practical difference in day-to-day use. With the right panel setup, I can run a mixed load in the range that I actually use at camp, like a refrigerator cycling, lights, a router, device charging, and a fan. And I'm not constantly doing battery math in my head. On a partly cloudy day, it still behaves well. When the sun dips, you see the input drop. When the sun comes back, the input ramps quickly. It feels responsive, not finicky. For output power, the inverter has been solid for me. I have used it with a microwave, a coffee maker, and a small table saw. I also tried it with a shop vacuum and a window air conditioner in separate sessions. It did not trip on me unless I got greedy and stacked too many high-draw appliances at the same time. For normal use, it has handled what I consider realistic loads for a recreational vehicle or a small emergency setup at home. Things like refrigerator duty, some lighting, internet gear, and a television. Battery capacity is enough to be useful, but it is also small enough that you will drain it faster than you think if you treat it like shore power. I did a test with a high-draw cooking appliance, and the battery percentage fell fast. That is not a defect. That is just what happens when you pull a lot of power from any battery. The way I use it now is more practical. I save the high-draw stuff for when I have strong solar coming in, or I keep the use short. For everything else, it is a comfortable daily power source. The expansion option is real, and it changes how you can use the system. I have not permanently added expansion batteries to my setup, but I have spent time with a friend who did. The main benefit is not that you can do something new for 5 minutes. It is that you can live normally for longer. If I were doing multi-day off-grid use with heavier loads, I would rather add battery capacity than constantly chase charging opportunities. Now for the stuff that bothered me, because there are a few things. Fan noise is the obvious one. When I am charging hard or pulling heavy loads, the fans are not subtle. In a garage or outside, I do not care. Inside an recreational vehicle at night, I notice it. If you are sensitive to noise, this is something to think about. Another issue is that it is not a true uninterruptible power supply. It has emergency power switching, and there is a switch over time. That can reboot sensitive equipment like a desktop computer. My workaround is simple. I plug my computer into a small dedicated uninterruptible power supply, and then that uninterruptible power supply plugs into this unit. That gives me the smooth transition I want. Idle drain is also real. If I leave it sitting with nothing plugged in and everything off, it still loses charge over time. In my case, I saw it drop enough over about 2 weeks that I would not trust it as a set it and forget it emergency box. The way I handle it is I top it off periodically, or I leave it connected to a charging method when I am using it regularly. I think it is happiest when it is part of a routine, charging and discharging, especially with solar. I also had a charging calibration oddity one time, where it seemed like it got weird past about 80%. What fixed it for me was running it down until it shut itself off, then charging it all the way to full in one uninterrupted session. I waited for the charger brick indicator, not just the screen reading full. After that, it behaved normally again. As far as smart features, I will keep this simple. There is no mobile app support on my unit. I would use an app if it existed, mainly so I could check solar input and remaining capacity without walking over to the unit every time. In a recreational vehicle, that gets old when the unit is tucked near the door or under a bench. The onboard screen does the job, but it is not convenient in bright daylight, and it is not remote. So overall, this is how I would sum it up. I keep using it because the alternating current output is strong enough for real appliances, and the solar input options make it practical to recharge quickly with the right panel setup. It feels like a tool that expects to be used, not something you buy and forget about. The trade-offs are weight, fan noise, the external charging brick, no app, and the idle drain that makes long-term storage less ideal. If you are like me and you want a solar-first setup for camping, recreational vehicle use, or a small off-grid workspace where you can feed it with panels and cycle it regularly, it fits that routine well. If you want a silent box that sits for months and always stays topped off, I would not pick this one without a plan to maintain the charge. You can find detailed information about the Pecron E2000LFP Portable Power Station Solar Generator 2025 in the comments section. See you in the next video.